San Francisco, circa the late 1960s. A period of time where art flourished, communities grew, and diversity began to spread its way into the city. One particular district, the city's Mission District, home to many Latino families, was growing in size, and its culture was becoming more and more prominent. However, this also led to discrimination as far as the eye could see. Police saw this as their own personal playground, questioning and accusing those whose skin was darker than their own. Protests were already challenging police brutality, on top of also protesting unfair wages, racial and gender issues. It was a time where many groups were fighting for civil rights, including African Americans, women, and other oppressed groups. Latinos especially were the victims of widespread discrimination during the late 60s and early 70s. They hadn't yet established a widespread movement compared to other racial groups, one being the Black Panthers, who advocated for African Americans. This lack of protest and media coverage allowed for them to be discriminated against on a day-to-day basis. Oscar Rios, who was a teen at the time and also a brother of one of the Siete, said, "White cops would treat Latinos, especially young teens, with suspicion, and it was very rough for Latinos in the Mission," he said. "If you were hanging around, riding around, the police would stop you. Whatever they felt like doing to you, they would do it." Daily life was overshadowed by fear and discrimination at the hands of those who were supposed to be protectors. It wasn't just the cops against Latinos, it was also the media as a whole. In an effort to fight back, activists created the Barrio Defense Committee, a group meant to represent Hispanic people in court. The media, however, wouldn't promote or make an effort to support Latinos because of the social construct during this period.
Los Siete de la Raza shows how attacks on rights and responsibilities can motivate community resistance by highlighting racial injustice and police brutality against Latinos. This important event united the Latino community in San Francisco and nationwide. It ignited a wider civil rights movement, demonstrating that standing together against oppression can lead to real social change.
On May 1st, 1969, 7 Hispanic teens were hauling a TV on the side of the street minding their own business when a car pulled up in front of them. 2 undercover officers, dressed in normal plain clothes and driving a car in rough condition, climbed out and asked for identification and for them to line up. They didn't identify themselves right away. The teens, justifiably skeptical, didn't trust them nor take them seriously. One of the officers, a man named Paul McGorn, immediately started hurling slurs at the group. Tensions escalated quickly. One of the teens fired back with his own profanity, and McGorn, unable to hold his temper, pulled out his gun. One of the teens saw this and made a grab for the weapon. A struggle ensued, and in the chaos of it, a shot rang out. The bullet struck Officer Joseph Brodnick, killed by his own partner instantly. McGorn was knocked to the ground, and the teens, terrified, fled the scene. The police and media were quick to label them as murderers, and them running from the scene was seen as enough proof. After all, in a time of racial tension, it was suspicious enough that they'd run away, especially after the death of a white officer. What followed was a massive manhunt. A reward of $5,000 was offered for information leading to their capture. $5,000 for each teen. It only took 5 days for the police to find 6 of the teens. They were apprehended in Santa Cruz, caught driving a stolen car. The 7th teen, however, managed to slip away and was never found. As this manhunt unfolded, the media quickly picked up the story. The narrative spread like wildfire. Minority kills white cop. The story was framed in a way that would fuel public outrage, as headlines raced to demonize the teens. But if the roles had been reversed, and a white cop had killed a Latino, the story likely wouldn't have received the same attention.
It was a classic case of racial bias in action. For the teens, their biggest crime wasn't murder, it was the color of their skin.
After the arrest, Los Siete de la Raza spent months in jail without bail. Protests were held challenging the unjust circumstances the teens had been arrested for. Propaganda in the form of posters were made to bring attention to the issues. Magazines dedicated to the cause were made, Basta Ya being one of the many. A pretrial determined that the young men had been subjected to illegal searches and seizures. Their defense attorney, Charles Gary, a lawyer who represented many others in similar cases, was determined to fight for them. The trial began in June 1970. The prosecution argued that one of the teens took Officer McGoran's gun and shot Officer Brodnick. McGoran testified that the officers had lined the teens, punching one in the face. A fight broke out, and the last thing he remembered was hearing Brodnick yell, "Look out, Paul, he's got your gun." However, the defense told a completely different story. They argued that McGoran had actually pulled his gun first and accidentally shot his own partner. Witnesses came forward testifying that McGoran and Brodnick had a history of excessive force. The defense even called McGoran's wife to the stand, and she herself claimed her husband was a racist, an alcoholic, and that he often planted drugs on suspects to ensure convictions. Throughout the 16-week trial, Los Siete and their legal team built a strong case. Four of the accused, Jose Rios, Mario Martinez, Tony Martinez, and Danilo Bebe Melendez, took the stand. Their testimonies all lined up, weakening the prosecution's argument. Then, finally, in the end, after an 18-month trial, the prosecution, led by District Attorney Thomas Norman, failed to prove its case. Los Siete were acquitted of all charges.
The acquittal of Los Siete de la Raza wasn't just a legal victory, it was a turning point for the Latino community in San Francisco. Their case had sparked widespread activism, and by the time the trial ended, a movement had already taken root. After months of protesting, organizing, and legal battles, the Latino community celebrated the victory, but they also knew the fight wasn't over. The case had exposed the deep racial injustices in the legal system and the brutality of law enforcement toward people of color. The energy that had built up around Los Siete didn't fade after the verdict. It transformed into something bigger. Community members, activists, and young organizers organized to create something great. They established the Los Siete de la Raza Defense Committee, an organization dedicated to empowering Latinos. From this movement, essential community programs were born. Free breakfast programs for children, health clinics, legal aid services, and education initiatives, all designed to support and protect Latino families in San Francisco's Mission District.
Their struggle became a part of a larger Chicano civil rights movement, linking their responsibility to fight with other movements across the country that were pushing for justice and rights. Even though the case of Los Siete de la Raza eventually disappeared from the headlines, its impact can still be seen today. It demonstrated that when a community stands together, it can challenge racial injustice and win. The organizations and programs that grew from this movement continue to serve the people, ensuring that the legacy of Los Siete wasn't just a trial, but all about Latino rights, responsibilities, and the power of protest.